Cool. So, we are headed home, per usual, another day. Kind of another dollar. Could be some more dollars, that would be nice. But another day, another dollar. Headed home nice and early at 1400. Gonna go train at the home gym in this heat of 74 degrees, so I will be sweating. Better than shivering, better than having to pull out the heater. So, it's going to be like the very few couple weeks where it is actually enjoyable to train in the garage before it becomes like 90 with extreme humidity and then it's just fucking death in there. So, going to enjoy it while it lasts. Again, headed up to Charlotte this weekend. Was going to do a powerlifting competition up there next weekend, but that would have required 24-hour weigh-ins, so would have had to get a hotel room, which cannot afford at the moment due to, just a contract negotiation at the moment with the entire H2F project. And we don't know what that's going to bring. So with that uncertainty, I'm like, probably should not get a hotel room, pay for a dog sitter, all that jazz, when I have no idea what holds for anyone on this project in a couple months. So just going for Mac and Rory here this weekend. Enjoy some food, hit up the Costco, head on back. But into the goodies. So the whole idea for today is you should be constantly changing your methods, but your principles should never change, or should very, very rarely change. So you will see this quite often as coaches are starting out, like just as strength coaches altogether. They go to a new certification, they change every single thing they do. They only do that new cert until they go to the next certification where they do change every single thing, do everything of that cert, and so on and so forth. You'll see this a lot in weightlifting too, where people start watching Cal Strength videos. They do everything Cal Strength, and then they find Travis Mash, watch all of that. Then they find Spencer, do all his stuff, and then they find Glenn Penlay, go 5x5, go Texas Method, all that. Where there is no actual principles behind anything that they are doing. It is just, I learned this new thing. This must be the way to do things. I was wrong before. This is what we're doing now. And there is no actual backing or principles behind what they're doing. It is just hopping, changing it based on the newest thing they learned. As you develop as a coach, I actually don't know many people who have actually written down their principles, but most coaches over time develop some principles on how they program, how they go about coaching. If you're a coach who has not written down your principles and constantly reevaluates them, I would highly suggest it. It'll change how you do a lot of things and change how you actually look at what you do when you realize, like, oh, hey, this is actually what I stand upon. But the big thing with that is your principles are your principles. They are mostly unchanging. Like, the foundation of how you do things should not change very often. For example, I have 5 principles that I go through and review every so often. I have only updated those principles or switched one out one time. The one thing I switched out is still something that I do hold dearly and I do still believe and still do, but there was a more apt thing to put in there that was kind of more of an overarching theme for that one in the first place. So even changing my principle, my list of 5 that I have, sure, I did change what was on that list, but it's not like that principle changed. I merely just changed it to a different wording, put something new in there that fit more of what I wanted, that also was overarching to what the original principle that I switched out was. So your principles are your principles. They are the basis for everything you do and all of the thoughts in your head that come out to your athletes. They should be basically pretty straightforward. Like, the things you build everything on should not change too much. However, your methods should change fairly often. Like, you should constantly be testing things, constantly trying new things out, where although you are changing those methods and maybe going about it the same way, all of those are still going to sit within your principles. So you'll see this a lot too with athletes. Athlete will program hop and hop and hop, Like, oh, this is the best new thing. This is the best new thing. This is the best new thing. Squat U, knees over toes, and my tibialis anterior is the reason I can't lift a bunch of weight. Where there is no like foundation of, hey, these are the things we are actually striving for. These are the things we hold dear. It is just, oh, I'm bored. I'm tired of this. Moving on to the next thing. Moving on to the next thing. You're seeing like not a lot of progress because the principles upon which they are training are changing week after week or program after program. So not a lot to really cover on this one, but your methodology and how you actually write out the program should change fairly often. Like you're going to go through competition prep. You're going to be in an off season. You're going to be just getting ready for competition prep. So all of that, like how you actually do things should change. You will learn new things. How you actually implement that into your program should change. Like one thing, I was doing a bunch of EMOMs into waves, into heavy singles 6 months ago with people. Something that I have done recently with a few people is 18 reps at 70%, knock those out in as few sets as possible. So you have that built-in auto-regulation. If you're feeling amazing, you're gonna do less sets. So your intensity will naturally be higher. Your relative intensity will be higher. If you are feeling like shit, you will do more sets, so your relative intensity will be lower. So it's that built-in auto-regulation with that heavy competition lift. So we went like 18 to 15 at 75, 12 at 80, 9 at 85, and then just different variations from there. But although the methodology between those two did change, the principle of if something's important, it should stay in the program. So the principle of, hey, I want to still have a high relative intensity with a lower absolute intensity farther out from competition on our competition lifts. That principle holds true even though the method, the way I got there, the way I put it into the program changed. So at the end of the day, stick to your principles, stick to your guns, have some things that you will live and die by, and these things will not change, but go about things in a different way. Try out different things, experiment. That's like one of the mainstay, one of the principles of this channel, if you may, is constantly experiment, constantly try things out. So because I do forget things when I rant, I wrote down on my hand my 5 principles that I go by in training so I wouldn't forget them. We are constraint-led. So I am led, all of my decisions are based on how can I create the best constraint to get that movement technique across to the athlete. Auto-regulation based. So all of the programming is based off of how the athlete is feeling that day. Movement masters, so I want the athletes to become amazing movers, and overall becoming more athletic and a better mover, you will then become a better Olympic weightlifter. Skill requires stimulus, so if you actually want to make a technical change, whatever variation you're doing needs to be of an adequate stimulus to actually elicit that change. Some banded kickbacks aren't going to do anything if you're squatting 200. We need an adequate stimulus to incite a change. And then stack weeks. So the goal of the program is not to have this perfect periodization cycle on paper that in reality it doesn't actually play out because people have lives. The goal is to stack as many perfect weeks together as possible. If we can just constantly have better weeks stacking on top of each other, we are gonna reach that pinnacle of, hey, we may have not had this perfect periodization scheme, but we had all of these perfect weeks, week after week after week. We are now in that top echelon. We have now made it to that peak, even if we didn't go about it in the general periodization scheme structure. So those are my 5 things there. I honestly forgot what the one that I switched out was. Yeah, I've completely forgot what it was, honestly. I haven't looked at them in a while since I did that switch out, and that was about 2 or 3 months ago. So it's probably a good idea for me to sit down and look over them again and probably have a good idea for that. Whew. People with the U-turns here in North Carolina, good Lord. But yeah, so stick to your principles. Do not relent on your principles. Your principles are what you should live and die by. But constantly change things, constantly test things, constantly change your methodology. That is what we got.